I'm going to speak for a few moments on today. Professor Hayes will tell you that I am not a long-winded preacher at all. I'm Baptist, but 18 to 22 minutes. That's my thing. I'm going to speak from the topic Paideia and Piety. What should we expect from a university church? Now, when I joined the faculty of Harvard Divinity School in 2010, I had no idea that 3 years later I would be standing here as the Plummer Professor of Christian Morals and Pusey Minister in the Harvard Memorial Church. As Brother Sam just told the story about my having served on the search committee, I said yes, even though I was on sabbatical, because I did think it was such an important task, and I had been asked by the president. And when she calls you and asks you to serve on a committee, when you're a junior professor, you don't readily say no. But when it was brought to my attention that someone had nominated me for the position, and she asked how I felt about it, I began thinking about how the time I would have to reclaim my sabbatical. And so I said, "Oh, Madam President, I don't think it would be ethically right for me to remain on this committee if I'm being considered." And we agreed, and I walked out of her office, jumped in the air, clicked my heels, and went back to my research, having no idea that I would end up in this position. Now, to be sure, my background is in theological education. I have served congregations over the years, and I always viewed my ministry, the academic life, as my ministry, as my vocation, as my calling. My ministry, however, it would take place behind a podium, not behind a pulpit, in a university, not in a church. And I would adhere to the ordinances of research, teaching, and service to an academic community, not conduct the ordinances and rituals of baptism, Eucharist, and weddings for a community of faith. So I began this ministry at the University of California, Riverside, in the wonderful Department of Religious Studies there, to examine critically systems of activities and beliefs directed toward that which is perceived as sacred is essential to understanding the ways human beings and social institutions function in this world. It's what Dean Hempton and President Faust were making clear this morning in their conversation. Religious studies helps to identify and explain the sacred stories and ultimate values that animate human activity beyond reductionist or deterministic economic or political theories. So for the past decade, my research focuses on the role of religion in contemporary society, paying particular attention to Protestant communities and intersections between evangelical religion, media, and U.S. national politics. The fields of Christian social ethics and cultural studies inform my work. Social ethics allows me to identify and address moral problems faced by religious communities. And cultural studies, namely the Birmingham School, provides me with a theoretical perspective to consider power relations, mass media, and larger social and cultural trends that are impacting communities of faith from every side. Like H. Richard Niebuhr's question to the critical inquirer of the moral life, I've always believed before we can answer what should we do or who should we be, we need to know what's going on. And so up to this point, my research and teaching have undertaken this task. I've sought to identify some of the prevailing trends in American Protestantism, such as televangelism, the incorporation of advanced media technologies, and the proliferation of megachurches, and situate these trends historically while interpreting them theologically and ethically. How did evangelical megachurches, for instance, move from the social margins to the political mainstream in the last quarter of the 20th century? Or were they always there and we just didn't realize it? In what ways have the incorporation of advanced media technologies into Sunday service transformed everything from the sacraments to physical space? And what questions should a person considering a career in parish ministry ask when they are entering a world where plasma screens have replaced printed bulletins and Facebook and Twitter updates have become contemporary hyper-mediated forms of the pastoral visit for many? It's this last question, I confess, that finally drove me from the warm, beautiful beaches of Southern California to the often frigid and frozen streets of Cambridge. My research, it was indeed rewarding. And my colleagues and the students at the University of California, Riverside were incredibly kind and accommodating to my scholarly interests. One of my former students is here now, Jordan Sherrick. He's actually a DivX student and now first year here at Harvard Divinity School. But when given the opportunity to join the faculty here, I couldn't resist, and I couldn't resist for two primary reasons. Number one, first, HDS, Harvard Divinity School, merges the life of the mind and the life of public service as well as any department of religion, divinity school, or seminary on this planet. Point blank, period. I joined a faculty here comprised of world-class scholars of religion, from archaeologists of ancient worlds to interpreters of medieval Islamic sciences, to interpreters of Latina and Caribbean theologies and philosophies. And a critical mass of students come to HDS after earning their bachelor's degrees, with visions of re-entering society as community servants. So for me, I knew research, teaching, and service here at HDS is not just an intellectual exercise. Rather, I would have the chance here to engage students with a moral telos to their degree programs that in many ways was consistent with my own sense of ministry. Number two, second, along with merging the life of the mind and the life of human service, the curriculum at HDS is designed to connect the local with the global without privileging one over the other. We train students here to be at home in a pluralistic religious world. In fact, there is not another divinity school, and this is not me just being hyperbolic, and I'm given to hyperbole quite often. But this is not the case in this instance. There is not another divinity school in this country that specializes in master's students, that has the proficiency in interreligious literacy and dialogue like HDS. When our students leave Harvard Divinity School, whether they eventually become lawyers, physicians, politicians, architects, or priests, rabbis, and evangelists, they will be among the most historically, culturally, and theologically literate in their given community. And this is the case based on the religious worlds that were opened up to them during their years studying here. I would say this has even made a difference in my own work since arriving. For instance, my first year here, I was teaching a course on African American religion and the Great Migration. And it was through conversation with my colleague, Jacob Alapunya, that opened me up to developments in several countries in post-colonial Africa and subsequent immigration patterns in Europe, North America, and throughout the Caribbean. And I learned from my conversations with him that I could never discuss religious change in communities such as Harlem or Roxbury without considering larger diasporic events and influences and religious change that was taking place everywhere. But now that I've shared a little bit about what I do here and how I arrived at HDS, let me connect this to my new position at the Memorial Church. That's what I'm here to talk about. What do I expect out of the Memorial Church, out of a university church? Now, my remarks here have emphasized holding animating tensions, right? Animating impulses in tension. Animating worlds, different religious worlds in tension with one another. At HDS, as part of a leading research university, we pursue veritas, this thing you see everywhere, the truth. We are committed to expanding both knowledge and ways of knowing. The ancient Greeks referred to this as Paideia, seeking truth and knowledge toward becoming positive and productive citizens of a society. But we also pursue caritas, the Latin term for love and service, charity, extending ourselves to others. The very thing we see in the work of so many alums who give of themselves to causes greater than themselves. Thomas Aquinas, he considered caritas the greatest of the three theological virtues. Charity, this love, it's greater than hope. It's more important than mere faith because it's faith in and hope for actualized. Caritas, both glorifies and reflects the nature of God. And it's the articulation of the love of God through extending God's love to our neighbor. Like Paideia, it's a form of virtue cultivation. Like Paideia, it's a tradition of piety that pulls from our communal resources of the past to speak to the pressing needs of the present. Now, anyone in here who has ever received a piece of correspondence from me knows that whether it be an email or a letter, I sign everything. My complimentary close is one love, L-U-V, love. This is my complimentary close. It's taken from a quotation of former scholar of religion, educator, and Morehouse College president Benjamin Elijah Mays. The love of God and the love of humanity, Mays wrote, are indeed one love. Here he unites, Benjamin Mays unites the object of his faith with the community of humankind, believing that he is called to serve both. He combines the inspiration and animating impulse driving his moral action with the ones who he believes he's been called to serve. And here he acknowledges that the ultimate and the immediate, the transcendent and the immanent, the infinite and the finite are always inextricably tied together. You can't say that you love a God that you've never seen and ignore those who you walk beside every day. Conversely, you cannot give yourself to a cause or pursue an ultimate concern, whether it be pursuit of truth, justice, or even physical healing in the medical profession, and not acknowledge that our intellectual and physical labor is tied to a world that is so much greater than ourselves. Something sacred even. This is why I accepted President Faust's offer to become Plummer Professor of Christian Morals and the Pusey Minister. For holding multiple worlds in tension, I believe is the role of a university church. A university church like any classroom on this campus. It's a laboratory here. It ought to be a safe space where no question, nothing is off limits. In the words of my dear colleague, Professor Stephanie Paulsell, we embrace mystery toward working our way toward a truth. We celebrate traditions toward building upon and moving beyond our usable past for future generations to come. And we explore varying conceptions of the sacred toward better appreciation, understanding, and ethical engagement of varying communities and cultures across space and time. We educate minds. That's what we do. That's what we're called to do at the University Church. We educate minds. And this is why I think of the Memorial Church as a teaching hospital, particularly for our Divinity School students here. We have this faculty. We have the resources. We have the curriculum. We have the pedagogies in place right here at 45 Francis Avenue. So it's incumbent upon me as the Plummer Professor of Christian Morals to make sure that I open the doors and wear down the path between Mem Church and HDS. Because when it comes to preparing men and women for ministry in the Christian context, we have the human power. Stephanie Paulsell, Dudley Rose, Carrie Maloney, Emily Click, Cheryl Giles, so many others. We have the material investment due to the generosity of many of you in this room. And we have the institutional capacity in that fine university church dedicated to honor Harvard's war dead 80 years ago. But unlike the experience for many of Harvard students in this context, the university church should also be a place of grace. That's a little different than the classroom context here often. I believe that we are a laboratory of learning. We are a place for critical engagement. We educate minds. But I also believe that the university church ought to be a space of grace. A place of grace where rank, status, professional identity, and dare I say pretentiousness are all suspended at the door. One of the things that you'll notice when you come into Memorial Church, for example, the Hayeses know this, my name isn't even listed as the Plummer professor or as the Pusey minister. And all of the wonderful affiliated ministers of the Memorial Church, including every ordained Christian faculty member on this campus at HDS is now an affiliated minister. And so whether it's me, whether it's Stephanie Paulsell, whether it's Carrie Maloney, whether whoever's leading the Eucharist, whoever is preaching, right? We're trying to make sure that we're modeling for our students a community of engaged involvement, ministry, and participation that is not based on the charismatic personality of one person. This is what we teach in the classroom here at HDS. So thus, I believe it's important for us to model it at the Memorial Church if we are committed to being a teaching hospital. And so for that, let me just say right now, thank you to all of you who have been so generous with your time. So it's a place where all of these things, it should be suspended at the door. We're educating minds, yes, but we are about expanding hearts. For I still believe that love is the great leveler of society. I'm not talking about love in the emotive sense here, but love in an ethical sense. Love as a willful act of embrace that not only embraces the stranger, but also calls into question the very social processes that render somebody strange in the first place. Like the classroom, the Memorial Church should be a place where the big questions are tackled and where those of us committed to the life of the mind should feel free and secure to speak truth to power in love. It's as Professor Hayes said, it is a pulpit of that prominence, of that gravitas, where we have the safety and security and theological impulse to speak to the bigger questions that often local parish communities do not have the platform or the resources to speak to. But unlike the larger culture of a hyper-competitive top-tier research university, the Memorial Church should also be a place that's viewed as a safe refuge for us to acknowledge our frailty, admit our insecurities, embrace our distinctiveness, and even celebrate our quirkiness with the blessed assurance that we are made in the image of God. Now, when I was offered this position, one of the first phone calls I placed was to my grandfather in Raleigh, North Carolina. He's an old newspaper man with an ever thoughtful and serious demeanor. I replayed the meeting with him, Dean Hempton, my meeting with Drew Faust. He said, "Now, you always said, if you could serve in a church and remain committed to your research, teaching, and scholarship, that you would, correct?" I said, "Yes." He said, "This is one of the handful positions in the country that fit that model, correct?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "You remember something. Remember, Jonathan, I told you your whole life about dedication and hard work and where it will get you." I said, "Yes." He said, "You remember I told you that there's no such thing as luck. It's hard work, it's dedication and commitment, and God will open doors for you. You remember I told you that?" "Yes." "No such thing as luck, right?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I was wrong because you are one lucky guy." And I'm here to say today, whether you call it luck, blessings, or grace, true leadership should acknowledge two things. Number one, no matter how hard we have worked, we're all here in some way by no cause of our own. And second, good fortune is not an entitlement or an inalienable right. I once heard our president, Drew Faust, say that we have all benefited from the imperceptible updraft of inexplicable luck, end quote. And this is why I think the university church should be countercultural to the hyper-competitiveness of a top research university that often impels our students to wear the mask of invincibility. We are preparing tomorrow's global leaders, and they need to hear that invincibility is not a virtue, nor is vulnerability a vice. All of us in this room, in the many leadership capacities that you all serve, all of us, we are beneficiaries of someone else's goodwill, of grace, as well as we are all beneficiaries of our own failures. So unless we can create a space, you and I, that lets students know that they are not the masters of their fate, they are not the captains of their soul, we do them an extreme disservice. And unless we can afford them the freedom to fall down, they will never be prepared to rise up to their true leadership potential. Yet, if we can imbue just a fraction of our students with the spirit of love, grace, compassion, and humility, this university church, the Memorial Church, can continue to impact positively the lives of countless generations across this planet. These, my friends, are the things that I believe that university church, such as the Memorial Church, this is what it adds to this fine university. We educate minds, we expand hearts, and thus we enrich lives. Just like all of the wonderful communities of faith that constitute the beautiful patchwork quilt of religious life at Harvard University, we are all accents of the ways this university is great. And we accent the way that this university contributes to leadership in our students in productive and positive ways. We are at University Church. We are at the Memorial Church, a common space, consistent with President Faust's vision of a culture of belonging. In 2 weeks, the porch, quote unquote, is going to open at the Memorial Church on the steps of Tercentenary Theater, where the doors of the memorial room will be open and 60 chairs and 30 tables and permanent benches will be placed out there on those steps, where students can come to our Mem Cafe, where we offer free coffee all day long. We tell students, you come for the caffeine, but stay for the community. We're a veritable teaching hospital. We're a teaching hospital for students who seek to integrate the life of the mind with a life of service. And we are a laboratory for persons who seek to explore the meaning of life, when scientific methods and rational inquiry as to the nature of suffering, evil, hope, and love seem to break down. This is who we are. This is who we strive to be at the Memorial Church. This, I believe, to be my call. And this is why I am so humbled to have the opportunity to serve in this capacity, to assist this community, particularly my faculty of Harvard Divinity School, to extend the business from 45 Francis Avenue to 1 Harvard Yard, to extend the business of educating minds, expanding hearts, and thus enriching lives. Thank you.